Hello everyone, my name is John, and I'm here to talk to you today about the recruitment process in companies. Right at the very beginning, the first step is typically new workers trying to give their applications to potential employers. So we call this submitting an application. Once companies receive the applications for a specific position, they'll typically have a long pile. They have to make this much shorter. They have to choose the best candidates. So we call this shortlisting the candidates. When a company is ready to offer somebody a job and somebody accepts, we call this hiring new workers or taking on new employees. Now, when it comes to the skills that most employers really care about, there's a lot of keywords that we like to use here. So first, companies look for recognized qualifications. These are official achievements that you have done that institutions have officially accepted. So for example, university degrees, certificates, companies really like to see this. Another area of skills that we like to talk about is hands-on experience and first-hand knowledge. These show direct involvement in specific projects. You weren't just a passive worker, you were actually responsible for some successes. And companies really like to see that. Some other skills that companies talk about are transferable skills, so skills that can be used in many different areas. Even if you learn them in one specific task, they're applicable in many different cases. And marketable skills, skills that you can market, skills that you can sell, skills that make you a valuable worker, and they'll bump up your status in the eyes of many companies. Now, there's a lot of legal terms that we also use when we talk about recruitment and employment. Typically, when someone gets a job, they will be offered an employment contract, so the document that says you can work at the company. There are many different kinds of contracts that we have, of course. So the first kind is an open-ended contract or a permanent contract where there's no end date specified in the documents. On the other hand, we have something called a fixed term contract. So there's an actual date that's given, for example, 1 year, and after this year, the contract is over and the employment period is finished. There are many variations of the fixed term contract. So we have a one-off project where simply one thing is done. As soon as the project is finished, the contract is completely terminated. We also have a fee for task agreement. A person does one specific task and they receive compensation for this task. So it's done on a case-by-case or project-by-project basis. Also in the legal realm, we have the different kinds of insurance that companies typically offer workers. If you are given a full-time employment contract, you will typically be offered some kind of health insurance. So the company will pay for doctor's visits or hospital visits or anything when it comes to your health. If they don't offer this, you're typically going to receive national social insurance, which is what you get from the state. So a lot of workers typically fight to get some kind of good health insurance from their employers. Finally now, we turn to kind of the bad part of the recruitment process when people lose their jobs. Now, people lose their jobs for many reasons, and we have different words for these reasons in English. So for example, if somebody loses a job because they did something wrong, it's typically because they failed to fulfill their responsibilities, which means they simply didn't do their job, or they didn't have professional conduct, which means they weren't acting in a way that the company wanted them to act. They weren't a good model for the company. Now, if a person loses a job because of this, because it's their personal fault, this is the more negative scenario. The common words that we use, in British English we say companies will sack somebody, and in American English we say companies will fire somebody. But of course, a neutral term, we can simply say companies dismiss the staff. Now, of course, people lose jobs often, and it's not their fault. So we have more polite English for this. So if companies are simply losing money and they have to get rid of workers, we can call this laying off workers, making cutbacks, downsizing, and letting somebody go. Here the English is a little bit more polite and it's not as severe as somebody making a mistake. Now finally, I wanted to leave you guys with some tips connected with job interviews. Things that you can do and things that you can avoid to help you feel a little bit more comfortable and definitely to boost your chances of success. So some of them may seem quite obvious, but I definitely think they'll help you out. For example, dress professionally. It's much better to overdress than to underdress. So wearing a nice suit and tie or any formal attire is definitely going to help you out. It's also a good idea to come early. Plan for the worst. You never know what might happen, and nothing bad will happen if you do arrive a little bit early. So plan to arrive definitely on time so that you avoid any problems that you might encounter with traffic or the weather, for example. Now, when it comes to discussing past employers, avoid saying anything negative. Focus on positivity here. Focus on your strengths and focus on turning your weaknesses into possible areas of improvement. How can your weaknesses be used in a way that's beneficial for you and for the company? If you avoid the negativity, the company and you will also see the positive attributes that you give as a worker. You should always try to appear confident. Don't feel bad about your skills or qualifications. Really be honest and be proud of what you have done. And the confidence will typically show, and the companies will definitely be impressed. When you talk about work, be enthusiastic. You don't want to seem bored, and you don't want to make the interviewers bored. So if you have passion, if you have enthusiasm, and if you show confidence, I really think this can definitely help you out. So good luck in any future job interviews, and thank you very much.